Welcome back with Making Bread with Debbie and Zuzu. Let's hope Zuzu stays over there this time. I thought this time I would go over all the equipment that you need. And it looks like a lot, but no worries. So, you know, you're probably thinking, oh, this is such a big ordeal, but it's really not. It looks complicated, but it's not. It's really simple. And I know, like, I think of bread as it's a very earthy thing, and that makes me think of Cousin Jackie, who says, you know, when you're stressed in life, you should earth yourself. And when I asked her, well, what's earthing? And she said, well, you take your shoes and your socks off and you get out and you walk in the grass and you walk among the trees, and the earth's energy gets into you and you feel less stressed. Bread making, especially sourdough bread making, is really truly a form of earthing yourself. It's just indoors because you're touching all these things. You see how alive the yeasts are, and it's just great fun. It's very tactile. It's sensory because you're feeling the dough. You're feeling it alive. You feel the gas it's creating. You smell it. You know, later you're going to be tasting it. You see it. The way the bread looks has just such a cool thing. So I know you're thinking, look at all that stuff there. I wanted to earth myself. I didn't want to put myself in hock. But I've got a lot of stuff here that are alternates to what you can use, so you don't have to have all of these things. So I'm going to go first. We're going to take it step by step. So first you've got your starter, and you've got to mix it. So you've got to have a nice sized jar and a nice clean spatula, and that helps you get down inside, especially if it's long handled. You can get down to the bottom, you can scrape the inside, and you can scrape it off, and then you can wash it very easily. So that's the first thing. A scale. And as I mentioned before, when we're doing starters, or even when I'm making my bread, I like to measure everything by weight, because then I know it truly is equal amounts, and I'm always consistently making the same amount. So that way my bread is also very consistent, and I can trust that each loaf of bread will be the same. So the next step that you will, or the next items that you will need, a KitchenAid mixer is awesome, especially it's one with a dough hook. And this is the way of kneading the bread. You don't knead it by hand. You can. If you don't have a mixer or your mixer's broken, you can do this all by hand as well. You don't need the equipment. This just makes life super simple. The scale, again, will help you get the ingredients in here. Once you blend with this and you get kneading with this, that also makes it very consistent. If you're always timing, then you know each loaf of bread that you're making or batch of dough will be kneaded a certain amount of time, and you should get it very consistent. Okay, the next things that you would need, or that are helpful to have, let's put it that way, is a big cutting board so that you can roll your doughs out on that. You just fling your flour on it, your doughs go on here, and you'll stretch them or shape them on this. Do you have to have this? No, because actually this countertop, a smooth countertop, works just as well. It just makes a little bit more mess. Once you've made your dough and it's in your mixer, now you got to put it someplace to let it proof. I use one of these kinds of containers. It's clear. I can see the bread. I can see how far up it's risen, and if you need to really know how far, you've got lines here. And you can put tape on it very easily and see exactly what your dough is doing. Do you have to have it? Nope. You can use a bowl. And I've used a bowl many, many years. That's what I used. And I would just spray the bowl and put some saran on the top of it, and there you go. So very simple. The next items that are useful to have is, once now you've proofed your dough, it's coming out of those pieces of equipment, you move to the next items, which are bannetons. I use for my recipe is 9-inch bannetons. One whole batch of dough will go in here and make a big rounded loaf of bread, or I split the dough and I put half in one of these and half in another one of these, and they make a cute little loaf. Now, do you have to have that? Nope. The next thing you can do if you want to have a consistently shaped loaf of bread is to use a bowl. It doesn't have to look exactly like this, but you can. You take a tea towel. If you don't have a tea towel, any lightweight towel will do, or any piece of linen will do, or muslin, any kind of fabric. You're going to coat that fabric with flour, a lot of flour, rice flour mixed with a little regular flour. That prevents the dough from sticking to this. And you just line it in there, take the crinkles out. Doesn't matter if a few crinkles remain. You're good to go. So you can use that. If you don't have a bowl and you don't want to do it that way, you want to free form your rolls, or your loaves rather. You're going to take the dough out of here after proofing. You're going to set it down on the counter and you're going to shape them into loaves or shape it into a round. You'll take a cookie sheet, and actually I flipped my cookie sheets, and I will free form my bread. I will have this floured with rice flour or regular flour so the dough doesn't stick, and I do it liberally, and I plunk my bread on there. I might do 2 loaves, so 1 loaf will be here and 1 loaf will be here, or I do 1 big round this way. And since it doesn't have the sides of a bowl or the bannetons, they tend to spread a little, so you want to make sure that they don't get close. Zuzu says she confers that this is a good way to do it too. So anyway, you don't need all of the equipment. There's ways around it. The next step is to use a peel to get the bread off of the cookie sheet. Do you have to have a peel? No. It makes life easier because you can have your bread on here on the cookie sheet, and it's pretty slippery on here, and if it were 1 big round loaf, you can put it on your pizza oven and go, and it will slide out and hit on there. It kind of takes a little more expertise to do that, but you can do it and not have a peel. A peel, and there's different types. You can see I have one that's kind of, I don't know, it's a laminated something. And then here's a metal one that Steve made for me that we used to use for our outdoor oven. But anyway, if your loaf of bread is on there, you put rice flour on this, and so it's very slippery surface. Zuzu, I don't need your help. Thank you, thank you. Anyway, if suppose there were a loaf of bread sitting here, I would take my peel, hold this, and go and slide it. That bread will come right on here. Then when I go to put it in the stone will be in the oven, I just stick it in there and I go just like a pizza, and it just pops right off onto there. The first few times you do it, you might get it kind of messed up and your bread won't have its nice shape anymore, but don't worry about that. That comes. So you don't absolutely have to have one of these, but it's helpful. Back to the bannetons or a bowl. The cool thing about those is that you put your dough in here. You're going to stick it in the fridge or a cool place, or leave it out over during part of the day to proof, and it will fill in this area. But you can see how small this is. It can pop in a refrigerator and not take up a lot of space. It's easy to cover. But the other cool thing about that is, and the same with the bowl, is that when you're ready to put this in the oven, you just take the banneton with the dough in it, flip it upside down onto your peel, and lift off. You'll have this beautiful round, poofed up bread, and now you walk into your oven and you go, and it slides right off. So it keeps a very nice shape. So those are another reason why you might want to have some of these items. But are they necessary? No. So the next 2 items that you need in order to bake is the pizza stone. And do you have to have a pizza stone? No. You could have left your bread on the cookie sheet with a piece of parchment underneath or a lot of rice flour on it, and just baked it in setting the pan in the oven. You can do that, but your crust isn't quite as good. It's not as chewy. It doesn't get as brown, but it still makes a pretty good loaf. But having one of these and cooking directly on this is awesome. Plus, having a stone does some other things for you. It enables you to make some wonderful pizzas, also great pitas, flatbreads, because it just creates this beautiful hot surface. I keep my stone in the oven all the time on the second shelf. I'll dust it off before I cook with it a lot. Don't worry, this stuff just this is just some rice flour that has started to burn a little bit. You don't wash it, you don't do anything. It just stays in the oven. When you want to clean it, you just dust it off, and that's all you need to do. The next thing that you need is the bread. In order to get a beautiful crust, is make steam in the oven. what I will do is I will take a cast iron skillet or even a pan, a metal pan. Don't use glass because you're going to be dumping ice cubes in there. And if you dumped ice cubes into a hot glass pan, you'll crack it. So it's got to be metal. The cast iron skillet is great because it retains a lot of heat. So when the oven is going through its preheating, this will be set down at the bottom of the oven, and once I put the bread on the stone, I will throw ice cubes on either in this pan or in my cast iron skillet to create a lot of steam, and that makes the bread do an extra rise and makes the crust just crisp and yet chewy at the same time. Now you might go, wait a minute, what's in her cast iron skillet? You know, this is a little nutty. Yeah, I have pieces of cane, I have river rock, washed river rock, and the reason that I do that is that I will pour a good cup and a half of ice cubes in there, and it creates so much surface area that it creates a great deal more of steam. Do you have to have that? No, it's just one more little added thing that makes the bread a little bit better, and it seemed to work well for me. But I used to just use a cake pan and ice cubes. That's all you do. So one other helpful items to have in the kitchen when you're making bread is a scraper, a bread scraper, and that's so as your dough is on the counter or on the cutting board, you can scrape it off, flip it, move it, and that makes it really, really easy to do. And I could show you that when we get ready to actually bake bread or make the bread. The other items that are very helpful to have are a smaller spatula. Do you have to have that that's long? No, because you can use your peel, or you can even use a shorter spatula for moving the bread around on the pizza stone once it's in the oven. I just find this one's really helpful because if it's a long loaf, I have a little more leverage, and rather than getting my peel used. So you can see there's a lot of alternatives to that. I have pastry brushes that I use for dusting off some of the flour, excess flour on the bread prior to baking it or after baking it. Then I also can use the brushes for cleaning up flour and get it into a pile, because rice flour and some of the other flours tend to go all over. So it gets a little messy. This is kind of like a sweeper for me. You can see I can use this on my stone also to just sweep up some of the old dusts that are on it. I can use my scraper to scrape any debris also. So do you have to have these things? No, you can find other things that work just as well, but they are handy to have, and a lot of times you have these in the kitchen already. So the other last thing are tea towels. Do they need to be tea towels? I got these at IKEA for 99 cents a piece. You can find tea towels everywhere. I like them for just having that to clean up, or for laying over the dough so it rises because it's so light and I can make it a little bit damp. Do you have to have them? No. You can cover your doughs with plastic, or you can use all kinds of whatever seems to work for you. There's no set item that you must use. So anyway, these are all the items. And I think I've told you, like the peel or having the stone were kind of the easiest things to start with. The rest, or the KitchenAid mixer. The rest you can substitute, and as we bake bread, I'll show you different ways of doing that. So anyway.
You forgot one thing.
Oh yes, what's that?
The scoring.
Oh my goodness, yes. Now, you know, I'm telling you with my brain, how many loaves of bread have I made forgetting to score or forgetting to add the salt? So salt and scoring, yes. So once you've made your bread and it's ready to go in the oven, you have got to find a way to let the bread open up and be able to rise, because the outer crust gets really hard and the bread is pushing from the inside from all the gas that the yeast creates, that it will cause the bread to kind of go and rupture out the side or explode from the bottom. So if you notice, whenever you buy a loaf of bread, there's always that score mark on the top, especially the rustic breads. You will see sometimes beautiful designs on the top of the bread, and that's something you can do on your own. But First and foremost, every loaf of bread that you make, you must score it before you put it in the oven. There are two items that you can use: a very sharp knife. This is just a steak knife. I used one of these for a long time. I know, and it worked so well. So the other item is called a lamb, and this is nothing more than a razor blade on a little piece of plastic. They come from very simple to just a handheld razor blade to something plastic that holds it to these beautifully ornate pieces of wood that hold razor blades. And when we make the bread, I will show you how to score, and it's very simple but very critical. So, do you need to buy a lamb? No. Do you need to buy a razor blade? No. But a sharp knife, you are going to need something to make that slit in the bread. So, thank you for reminding me. Thank you, Zuzu, for telling me it really does work. Anyway, that should be the end of all of the equipment that you need. So, anyway, next step is we're going to make some bread. And we'll cover how we use a lot of this piece of equipment at that time. So, catch you later.